the first episode of Diaper Dads I saw, I was like, man, I can't wait to be a dad so I can be on Diaper Dads. Like, this
Give me one.
let me go get Brittany pregnant so I can get on Diaper Dads.
What's up? Welcome to Diaper Dads. I am because you clicked on it and it's on my page or it's whatever, right? Yeah, okay. For those of you that don't know, I am George 2.0. And I want to welcome you to Diaper Dads. It's been a minute. I want you to really understand that this podcast is, in fact, for everybody. It's the name would suggest otherwise, but as we know, there's a lot that can be learned about ourselves when we examine how others approach a shared experience. And the experience that we happen to be centered on today is parenthood, but mostly through the lens of the father, the daddy, the papa, whatever you call your dad or whatever role that person plays in your life. That's what we're focusing on today. And it's because there are so many unique relationships and names and roles that can be played throughout the journey of this shared experience that this conversation ends up being for everybody. And I know when you get into the niche and you use certain words and you're thinking, well, is this just for fathers? No, it's not just for fathers, right? It's for anybody that happens to play a part, be curious about, or want to contribute to the journey of the father. Diaper Dads began 85 weeks ago. And I know this because it began on Instagram and they'll tell you. But those highlights of those conversations can still be found there. And it lived on IG because pandemic, but also because it provided an opportunity for an audience to be a part of and to give feedback towards and raise questions and even talk to each other in the comments. But for this iteration of Diaper Dads 2.0, we want to open the conversation to a larger audience. Much of this will still be available on IG at 2.0 TWOPOINTOH. But for now, we're going to continue this journey over here, recording at the Gap Studios for Listen to Me Productions. So I'm really excited to begin this new season. So much has changed since I became a father. And because of that, it was really inspiring for me today to have the first guest of this new season be a relatively new father. I'd like to bring in today the first guest of the season, who happens to be a really great friend of mine. This gentleman is a photographer. He's an activist. He's an activist photographer. He's a collector of graphic tees and limited edition hats. He's a husband. He is a teacher. He's a big smiler. And he is an exhibitionist, meaning he has exhibits. He's not a nudist. And perhaps the most relevant of all, he is a new father. So Diaper Dads, please welcome to the show, Reggie Cunningham.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, man.
What's going on, man?
Not too much, man. I did a little bit of what you said I do today. I had to teach today and definitely was doing the dad thing today. But now I am here spending time with you, my brother, and I'm excited to be here.
Man, I appreciate it. I know, even from a schedule standpoint, it's always difficult to figure out. We happen to randomly FaceTime each other, send links and text and things like that, the things you can get to whenever you want, right? But it's difficult to sometimes figure out, as much as there are routines being established, when in a day you can pull aside time to actually do this. So I really appreciate you doing that. You guys went to the doctor today, right?
We went to the doctor today, man. Today was 9-month checkup for baby M. Time is flying. I was talking to my mom today on the way to class about just how, he's almost a year old, and it just seems like yesterday that we just brought him home, and now, he's trying to learn how to crawl and all kind of new stuff. So
I love it. When you first and this isn't going to actually be a chronological conversation, right? But I do want to start with sort of the beginning of the fatherhood journey. When you find out you're going to be a father, there are certain things that happen, right? Your boys give you advice. You start thinking about, how do I want to do I want to journal? Do I want to, for you, maybe even how do I want to capture this time period? Was there anything that you plan to do that you actually are doing? And is there anything that you plan to do that you were like, I actually don't have enough time to do that? Like that's ridiculous.
I think the biggest thing that I plan to do, I saw this, I believe, on a Google commercial like years ago, where when a father found out, or a man found out he was going to be a father, he immediately created a email address for his child, and up until they were 18, wrote periodic emails, and then gave their child the password and everything to access those emails when they turn 18.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
always thought that was an amazing idea, and so it's pretty much when we found out that my wife was pregnant, we went in, we made the email address, and I started sending him emails. And so periodically I sit down and just, type up a little quick paragraph and email my son. Anything that I didn't do, not yet. Mainly because I wasn't sure what fatherhood was going to be like. I didn't grow up around my father, so I didn't really get the example of watching someone father as I was growing up. So I really didn't know what to say that I was gonna do for sure, that I ended up not doing.
Yeah, I'm a content capture as well, or whatever they call it nowadays. And I remember deciding to buy the iPhone with the most storage because
Yeah.
I didn't want to think about capturing, right? So and I just was going crazy. And I had a couple different cameras set up in the delivery room and all those kinds of things you sort of plan for in the back of your mind. And then, there's the idea of the real responsibility or the real, the things that you have to do that sometimes get in the way. And I think because, so much of the journey is different, particularly for those of us that are still dealing with the pandemic. And I say those of us because some people are acting like it's not happening anymore,
Like
right?
it ended long ago.
Like you're tired of it, so it's over.
Right.
There were a lot of things that changed about the journey, for me. Was there anything about where pregnancy and fatherhood fell in the timeline of your life or within, what was happening in the world that made you approach it differently than you had always dreamed you would? Or had you just not really thought about what it would be like?
Yeah, I mean, being in the middle of a pandemic and having a pregnant wife, was tough. I remember the one thing I remember the OBGYN saying for sure was like, don't get COVID. Like
Mm,
point blank, period. Don't risk it, don't get it. That could be, at the time, especially, very detrimental to your child. I think that especially with my child's special entry into this world, because he didn't have a traditional journey into this world, that definitely changed some things that we had planned. Right, we wanted to do a baby shower or something like that. We wanted to. It would have been great to go around and visit all family while Brittany was pregnant, and to do a maternity shoot. Like we didn't get to do all of those things because he decided to that he was missing out on too much and wanted to show up a little early, right? So I think that there are those things that you see everyone doing, as you scroll your Instagram feeds and your Twitter feeds and Facebook, that, we didn't get to do because of a special entry. But I wouldn't go back and change anything about that. I think that, the way that he got here and the way that things went were exactly how they were supposed to.
You talk about seeing other people and the way that they handle their Instagram or their Twitter feed. And I happen to know that you have a pretty unique relationship to Twitter, particularly because of the activism that has been such a part of how you've maintained and built relationship over that particular platform. And then, of course, as a photographer, obviously Instagram, regardless of what else comes up, right? Instagram happens to be, and even regardless of Instagram saying we don't even want photos anymore, y'all keep y'all little photos. You know what I'm saying? It still happens to be a platform I know that does a lot for you. Yeah. I wonder, when you start thinking about scrolling through and seeing other people, not even from a comparative standpoint, but you guys have been pretty guarded, as we are as well, about the images of baby M that are presented. Is there ever a moment when you regret it and you wish that,
sure. I mean, like, of course, I feel like we have the cutest kid in the whole
you
entire world,
you
right?
do. You do.
Only to be rivaled by one Georgie Dubois.
And let me tell you, I'm biased on both sides. So,
but so yeah, I mean, like you want to show your kid off, right? Especially when they're learning new things. One of the one of the things that baby M got to try for the first time yesterday was solid foods, right? And I made a little video of, his journey into eating solid foods. Would I love to throw that up on Instagram? Of course I would.
And I'm gonna tell you, I saw it and I thought to myself, there's a certain kind of like cadence to those videos that just you're used to seeing them on the platform. And I thought I almost within the text, our group thread, I almost double tapped it. I was like, this is amazing. You know what I mean?
Like second nature. I honestly, I think that the people who struggle with it more than I do, it's probably my parents. Your grandparents, they always want to show off the first grandchild, it's the first grandchild. And so they want to post all the pictures and all that. And so, telling them like, hey, if you're posting a picture, we can't have his face. We don't share his name. We want him to have his entrance into the internet world on his own accord, as opposed to, us posting a cute picture and then all of a sudden it goes viral and it's all over Pinterest and the whole world knows who our kid is before he has a chance to get to know the world. Right. So, I think there are definitely times, especially back to school season, you see all the people posting with their kids and what grade they're going into. But trust me, we got fits. The family that J's together stays together is our motto, right? So he's got J's and all that stuff. But if you're lucky enough to be in one of our close friends or something like that, then you might get a text or something like that. But it's worth it to for his sanity and for his growth to make that a sacred space.
It's interesting. My dad is the one I think about the most. My dad is, Vietnam War vet, only child, South Philly, the dude, right?
Yeah.
But when he gets around babies, I mean, he's just mush, like absolutely mush. And he didn't necessarily get that opportunity during the baby part with Georgie. But what we did do was a lot of photo streaming and a lot of FaceTiming, right? And I think about, because even when, if FaceTime happens anywhere near Georgie, she thinks it's for her. Who's that? This is for Papa. You don't have a phone.
It's a business call. Mind your business.
Business has nothing. Mind your business. Right? But there's been something cool about the way technology has been used, and obviously we share a photo stream in that same way. That does kind of keep you at pace to sort of be able to go back and see, but still feel private. And I admire, and honestly, I'm relieved when there are other parents that have taken that same approach, because it's hard, right? We talk about comparison in terms of having your child show up someplace, but there also is that looking for like community of people that think the way that we do, right? And it's no judgment or shame to anybody who does the other. But to your point, your child is a gorgeous human being and would end up on somebody's Pinterest or flyer or whatever, right? So I appreciate how you approach that. As a photographer, how does that work though? Because it's not just about this child being your child and wanting to show, because in many ways it's our own progress, right? Like those are hallmarks of what we're doing, even if it's not us. That kid is your kid. But as a photographer, it's even more compounded. And I've seen some, and I'm sure there's a lot that I haven't seen as well. How do you get that thing that you want as a creative and as a father?
Well, it's interesting. Back during the Great Black Reckoning summer of 2020, when we were going out to protest and stuff, I stopped taking my professional camera out to those things, because I felt like if the police mess up my camera, and this is $5,000 worth of equipment, I'm going to jail, right? So I bought like a little point and shoot kind of camera that I literally take with me everywhere. I keep it in my pocket. It's always in a bag. If I have a bag with me, it's in a coat pocket if I've got a jacket on. Always ready to create those moments. And part of the reason I started doing that too was because, when the pandemic happened, we didn't know how long it was going to last then, right? They was talking about a couple of weeks or something like that. And we went a long time without seeing a lot of our friends. And at this point, 2.5, almost 3 years into it, there's still a lot of friends that we haven't seen, right? And so I took it upon myself to start capturing moments, because you never know when you're going to have those type of moments again. And I've carried that with me into parenthood as well. Whenever, we had company over to the house or we've taken him somewhere or something like that, I always take my camera with me, because you just never know when you're going to have an opportunity for that particular moment again. Right. And the truth is that actual specific moment will actually never happen again. You can recreate it. Right. But that specific moment will never, ever, ever happen again. And so you might miss out on something that you want to create as a memory. Part of the reason I do that too is we don't, I grew up in a house full of photo albums. My mom kept all the family's photo albums for our entire family. And I grew up around that, knowing who all these cousins and aunties and uncles and all this stuff were. And so the more I can continue to carry on that tradition and chronicle our family and what we're doing and all of those things, the better.
And it's hard to revise the photo album. You can archive you can archive that feed. But that one time that you slept on your hair too long on the left side, that's going to be in that dusty book on the coffee table.
Yeah, buddy. I mean, that's why, like you, I got the highest capacity phone when it came out.
Gotta do it. What are you the point and shoot that you move with? I mean, since there are some people that are tuned into the fact that you're a photographer, I'm sure they're wondering what they can carry. What are you shooting with?
So first I got it was a Fujifilm X100T. It was a display camera at Best Buy. It was kind of beat up. I think I paid like $300-$400 for it. And I really fell in love with, the color science and how it reproduced photos and all that. And so I ended up upgrading it about a year ago to a Fujifilm X100V. And I really love it. It's actually probably my favorite camera to shoot with.
And I'll tell y'all what, for those of you listening, I don't know if and those of you watching, you can see over my left shoulder. That is evidence that you never, ever go into the camera shop with Reggie Cunningham, because you will come.
My evidence of never going in the camera shop with George 2.0 is upstairs. Okay, so let's not.
Look, y'all, you guys are listening to Diaper Dads with George 2.0. Our guest today is Reggie Cunningham. When we come back, we have the opportunity to allow into the conversation two people that are always in conversation with us at all times, our wives, who have given us some questions that they're curious about us answering about our role in fatherhood. And because they know us really well, they'll kind of know whether or not we're giving the truth. Interestingly, before we got on this call, we asked our wives whether or not they could give us a question that we could answer that would be a part of this discussion, because, and Reggie, correct me if I'm wrong, they love being a part of our discussions. I mean, every time
they do.
I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that there's going to be some similarities between both of our wives' questions.
Probably so. Probably so.
Not going to be surprised if they're branches from the same tree, right? All right, I'll go first. Let's see here. Jovian asks, "Ooh, this is good." Jovian, and I should have actually looked at this a little bit earlier. Jovian asks, "What do you admire about yourself as a father?" Wow. I appreciate the question, because it gives me room or license to give myself an attaboy or attagirl, as it were, right? And I think that, or atta them. And actually, that's kind of leading into what I think my answer is, right? I think that the thing that I admire the most about myself as a father is my willingness to, no matter how slow, no matter how begrudgingly, but my ultimate willingness to give up former conditions, former thoughts, former patterns, even former routines. There are things that I am willing to do for my daughter that I did not think I was going to be willing to do. There are things I'm willing to consider that I was not prior to being a father. And I think that what it ultimately leads to is my desire for her to have an opportunity to engage the world as she sees fit and to trust herself, as opposed to whatever bias, routine that I put on her. Apart from the idea of look both ways before you cross the street and don't touch that, that's hot, things that I'm going to be pretty specific and unforgiving about. I find that as she gets older and she approaches things, whether that's in her fake kitchen putting ketchup on her ice cream, I'm like, okay, hey, try it.
It might be good.
you might have discovered something. And I think that, you know, while that's funny, I think that leads to a style of parenting that allows her to trust herself sooner than another style would, right? And that's ultimately what I want. Like I want her to get to the place where she believes enough about herself and the world she understands and her continued connection with her higher power. Should she decide to continue using that pronoun, to be able to answer questions for herself, to be able to make decisions for herself because she knows for herself. And so I think, you know, to answer the question specifically, the thing I admire the most is my flexibility, because I wouldn't necessarily have called myself a flexible person in certain areas, but she has opened me up in a way that makes me realize that there are other answers and maybe she's the one to discover them. And so learning together and revisiting things that were so concrete to me before and allowing them to be just a little bit more elastic is the thing that I'm surprised about, but I also admire in myself as a father.
Yeah, I think what's beautiful about that too is, in addition to inspiring her to seek out those answers, it also inspires her to keep asking questions too, right?
Yes.
You know, so often we stifle our children's imagination because we don't have the imagination that they have, and so we start to limit them. And so sometimes rigidity is what really leads to that, right? And so maintaining your flexibility as it relates to anything that she does encourages her to keep asking, well, why not? Right? If somebody says this can't be that way, why not? Right?
Why not?
That is literally how we change the world, by asking, why can't this be this way? Right? When you think about laws in this country, they were all made up. Everything purely made up. Somebody made it up. So why can't it be different? Right? The other thing that's beautiful about that question that I love is, I don't know about you, but for me, so much of me analyzing myself as a father is critique, as opposed to laudatory.
Yeah.
So for so often, like, I look at something, I'm like, damn, I messed that up. I got to do this next time. I can do this better next time. I can say this a different way, you know, or next time, you know, he didn't sleep through the night because I didn't do this. Let me try this. Much critique. But to be able to say, no, actually, like, I'm a damn good dad. Like, this is something that I do really, really well. And it, you know, clap for me, gas me up, right? It's something that's really beautiful. And I know, especially for me, because I didn't have my father around to model those things for me, is especially important for me to do, because it's easy to fall into that critique side, because I didn't see what was the good things to do, right? So yeah, I think that's beautiful. You're absolutely correct in that our questions are similar from our wives.
Who's surprised?
Like you, I did not come up with an answer beforehand either.
We're just gonna be honest, that's all. Yeah.
I mean, mainly because my wife is a procrastinator and sent me my question right before you hit record. Yeah, so if you got the sound of a bus backing up and running her over, that might be more apt. But the question is, what traits of yours do you most and least hope to pass on to our sweet boy? Which she always knows how to ask me a question that is a whammy. So
and least,
the least part is the part that's like getting me, right? So the most, I think I would say, how much I love my people, my friends, and my family, right? In the ways that I show up for them. I try to be there for the people that I love and support them in whatever way that I would want them to show up for me. And so that is one of the biggest traits that I really, really hope to pass on to him, is to just show up for his friends.
Yeah.
Especially being, for myself, a kid that didn't grow up around family. My friend relationships were so important to me, right? I didn't grow up with a older brother. I didn't have a little brother until I was already 10 years old. And so the people I went to school with and the people I played with in the neighborhood were the people that were family to me, right? I got to choose that family. And I imagine that it's probably going to be similar for him, because a lot of his family is in St. Louis, and I don't imagine that we will move back there, right?
Right.
So he will know his family, but he won't grow up around them. And so his family is going to be who he chooses it to be. Hopefully we've modeled that by the village that we've created. We call our R&B village. that we've created that have shown up for us in amazing ways. So he can use that as a model, and he can use the way that we interact with them as a model as well. And so that's one of the biggest traits I hope to pass on to him. The one that least, there's so many, man. Like there's so many things about me that I would hope that he doesn't carry on.
Don't get yourself in trouble. You know,
look,
tell on yourself now, right?
What would I least want to carry on? I think that I would least want him to carry on traits that developed in me because of childhood traumas that I experienced. And so that's a myriad of different things, right?
Sure.
But through my own work in therapy, I've been able to identify where they come from, and try to do the work not to pass those things on to him. So for one of them is a big fear of failure, right? I really hate messing up and letting people down because I fear failing people. And so at times in my life that has been debilitating. It has kept me from doing things and trying certain things. I don't want him to ever be afraid of trying something. I think that I can get defensive sometimes because of my relationship that I had with my stepfather. There was several times because of our relationship, and he was the father, he was right, even though he actually was not right.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I felt the need to always defend myself and explain myself. And I still fight that sometimes. And that's something that I hope that he doesn't pick up. I hope that he doesn't see me do that and then start to mimic that same behavior as well. Those are the first two things that really, really come to mind for me as traits I would not want to pass on to him.
I think that, and of course, knowing them as we do, I think that in some ways it speaks to what I think they appreciate about us as fathers. I think that they sort of had an idea of what some of those answers might be, but also at the same time, as they are wont to do, pushing us towards a deeper thought process around it, right? And to being even more vulnerable, knowing that we have created the safe space. So to the wives, appreciate that. As we close out, Reg, I want to know, and this might be a difficult question, and as I listen to you, to sort of bookend it, thinking about some of the ways in which you've been thoughtful in terms of preparing the email address for baby M, some of the ways in which you've been careful in terms of the way that you share, but are also recognizing that you want, despite not being able to share as broadly as you might have under other circumstances, you want baby M to understand community and friendship and tribe. To bookend on that backside of it, and as we know, you're never done being a parent. That's what our parents, tell us, right? But there is a point, I imagine, that you come to where an event happens, an acknowledgement from your child takes place. Something occurs that make you say, I did it. I did it. Like I got, and for some people, it's like I got him or her to college or whatever the benchmark.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? Do you have in mind yet sort of an echelon that baby M will get to, or that you and B will get to, where you're like, okay, you know what? I've done, I'm going to still do more, but this kid's okay.
His mother is one of the purest hearted, best people that I know, like hands down. And I've told her that several times over the years. And so he has a lot to live up to in that department. But I think that I don't know if there's like a plateau point that'll make me feel that way, but I think that there'll be certain points along the way that let me know, like, yeah, we doing it right. And I think that for me, it'll be seeing him be a really just good person, just like his mom is, a good, kind kid. I think that is what I want for him, right? To just be a good hearted, kind, loving person, to meet everything with love. That's one of the things that my wife does so well, is whether people are criticizing her, whether people are lauding her, whatever it is, she meets it with love.
How do they do that? How do they well, you know what? Let me consider what they were thinking about. No, I'm not considering
I
nothing.
mean, like, am I a bad person? Like, what is going on, right? But I want him to be able to meet the world with love in the same way that his mom does, and I think that is in, you know, whether it be sharing a toy when he's in preschool, or letting somebody, you know, who couldn't afford a notebook in his class have one of his notebooks. I mean, like, literally any of those things, I think would be just benchmarks along the way that let me know, you know, hey, it may not have been perfect, but we're doing it right here, and he's good.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I also really appreciate your vulnerability and your time. And also, I appreciate your contribution. I think that one of the things that we can do, particularly in this world as it's spinning to some would say out of control, is our contribution to our children. And just your thoughtfulness around being a father, you know, even at this point, is something that I can already recognize is to be lauded and to be applauded. And so I really appreciate you for that contribution and for your time. I think it's almost criminal that we have not been to see baby M yet, but I guarantee that it is coming sooner than later. But yeah, we'll make it happen. We definitely will. And I really appreciate you making this time today, Reg. I really do.
I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you and Jovian being such an amazing model for marriage, for parenthood. I mean, for moving through life. Y'all have just been such a blessing to us, especially since we got married. And I can't explain to you how much we appreciate y'all.
I appreciate it too, man. And because of the way that you brought partnership into this conversation, because of how much you have to say about your partner in this parenting journey, I also want to tip my hat to you as an incredible husband. And I think that partnership is something that baby M is going to see, and it's going to lead to that moment where you'll say, we did something right. Definitely.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
I'll see you next time, bro.
All right, bro.
For those of you that are thinking about having a kid, who are on your first kid, your second kid, your 20th kid, or maybe even your first grandchild, we want to offer Diaper Dads to you as a safe space where you can talk about the fatherhood journey with other fathers, where you can raise questions and see what experiences you might want to glean from and or share, as we all share the responsibility, the privilege of this fatherhood journey. I am George 2.0, and this has been Diaper Dads.